I'd like to welcome everybody to the December 12th Public Safety Meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Do I have a motion for the acceptance of the agenda?
I so move. I would like to amend the agenda to add under other agenda items number 4, discussion of the tornado.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Now we will move on to the approval of the November 14th meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
I so move.
I'll second. Motion carries. Do we have anybody for citizen comments?
No.
Okay. Item number 1, under ordinances and resolutions. Reading of Resolution 2023-54. A resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a memorandum of understanding with Sumner County Schools for Fire Department Services.
I move that we send this to BOMA tonight with a positive recommendation.
Can we open that for discussion, please? Okay. All in favor for the motion to discuss? Second. Okay. So I have some comments to make on this regarding the memorandum of understanding, and some of them kind of cross over into the agreement with the Shackle Island Fire Department. So I just want to go over a couple of things. And I've heard before this statement many times, and it couldn't be more true, I think, in this case, especially with all the statements that have been posted on Facebook lately. These statements are partially accurate information, but they are presented in a grossly inaccurate manner. And I think that kind of really sums it up, at least from this committee. And I believe most of BOMA, this is not a political issue. This came about when the General Assembly and our insurance carrier noticed some wording that was concerning. Chief Bush can tell us about how it came about.
Oh, so it was brought up by our insurance provider at a conference. I think that was attached to your packet. Basically, they were doing mutual aid versus interlocal agreements. The presentation was done by Miss Kristen Berexa, who's with Ferrara, Bates, and Berexa, which is a law firm. I guess it's affiliated with our insurance provider. And basically, we're covered under TCA for mutual aid assistance for any declaration, much like the tornado. So when the mayor declared a state of emergency here in the city of Hendersonville, we could bring in whoever we wanted to, and we're covered under TCA. During this presentation, they brought it forward to us that regular occurring calls were not considered to be mutual aid, and that we would need interlocal agreements in order to provide insurance coverage for us to go outside of our city limits. So again, a train derailment, anything that's going to potentially cost a large loss of life or property is covered under that TCA, which is a mutual aid agreement. Much like the tornado, like I said, we had representatives from Murfreesboro up here the other night, Franklin, Lebanon. We had several agencies in the city to help us cover calls, and that's covered under the mutual aid law. Interlocal agreements are needed for house fires, car wrecks. Hazmat's kind of a quirky thing, but a gasoline spill can be a hazmat situation. So there's 5 call types that fall under that interlocal agreement that we should implement with our responding agencies. And that's not just for volunteer fire departments. That's us offering aid to Gallatin. So if Gallatin has when the parking garage caught on fire, the roof of it, by law, we're not allowed to go into Gallatin without having that interlocal agreement. Our insurance provider won't provide liability insurance for us.
So up until this point, we didn't have to have these until the insurance.
It was always a mutual understanding, a gentleman's agreement, so to speak. That's the way it's been, and I've been in the service for 37 years. There's never anything written in the books on that. And then this was presented, and that's when I brought it back and talked to Mr. Aikenroth about it.
And that has changed now.
Yes.
With that. Okay.
before this insurance change happened, it would have benefited both areas that are covered if we had had a mutual agreement, because it would have had a positive, if we had had a written agreement, because it would have a positive impact on ISO ratings. Is that true?
So there's a lot of factors that play into that, right? I mean, we can talk about those now. But so when you talk about having agreements with agencies, ISO, when they come in, they look at training records, they look at qualifications, they look at a lot of different things. And if their training records aren't kept very well, it could potentially hurt us or them. I mean, ours are in shape, right? We have to be, or we wouldn't have the rating that we have. But if you attached yourself, so like Gallatin would be a solid choice to attach ourselves to, because they meet the state requirements for training. And then we get to count their staff along with our staff. So we know if a big incident hits, Gallatin can come here with an interlocal agreement, and that's manpower or lady power, whatever you want to call it, to help cover incidents within our city limits.
Okay.
And vice versa for Gallatin. If they had a big incident, we would go there. And then again, ISO ratings, we could actually feed off each other because of documentation, training, all the things that are pertinent to ISO ratings.
We had a meeting with our insurance carrier. It was our attorney, our COO, Chief Bush, came out and met with us because we had concerns and questions about this. And to kind of squash a lot of the rumors and chatter that's going around, there's a possibility, and if Mr. Ray could help me clarify this, that they could cover us. However, we are not guaranteed. And the only way to have 100% coverage would be to have the interlocal agreement signed. And as Bowman members and aldermen, our responsibility first and foremost is to the citizens of Hendersonville. We were elected to serve and represent them. And if we don't have this agreement signed, or even the agreement with the school signed, we would be negligent in our duties to have the coverage that we need to represent Hendersonville. Could you expand on that, Mr. Ray?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly correct. It's what was communicated to us, but even above and beyond the insurance coverage issue, the insurer representative mentioned something that I didn't think of, which is if we go outside of our jurisdiction, are we protected by the GTLA, the Government Tort Liability Act? So the Government Tort Liability Act, it protects all the immunities that we enjoy under that for us being a governmental entity, but it also limits any liability to $300,000. If we're not protected by the GTLA, perhaps liability could be unlimited, and the coverage limits under our insurance policy is $1 million. So that could expose us even further. So two separate things: insurance coverage without the interlocal agreements, as we've talked about, and then two, whether or not we'd be protected under the GTLA outside of our jurisdictions without such agreements.
So all it would take to solve our coverage to be able to extend outside of our area to go to the schools would be to have a memorandum of understanding or an interlocal agreement signed.
Correct.
Okay. Chief Bush, could you help me just a minute? I have a list here of call types that I've been working on with the fire department. In the last, I know y'all had a software switchover, so some of the information was lost, but basically for the last 4 years, 11 months, we have provided mutual aid to the Shackle Island area to a tune of roughly 135 calls. Now, were those calls could you say that the bulk of those calls were calls that were toned out to Shackle Island that were not answered by Shackle Island, and that is why we went out to the Shackle Island area to assist?
Yeah, so current current protocols, which has been this way for the last 5-6 years, is the dispatch, the emergency operations or emergency communication center, dispatch is the primary agency for the call. And the volunteer side of events, if they don't answer that call, the dispatcher has a parameter to turn around and dispatch them again. I think they do that within a minute to 90 seconds. If they don't answer that call on that second time, they're supposed to dispatch the next closest agency. For house fires, they're supposed to dispatch the next closest volunteer fire department. And so typically what's happened on majority of these calls, that's on this sheet of paper, the responding agency, the primary agency has been dispatched. They were dispatched first, didn't answer it, dispatched the second time, didn't answer it, and then they dispatch us to it. And that really severely handicaps us as far as time, because now we're not really within the scope of our desired times for travel to get to somebody's emergency. And then the simple fact of what it does on the backside of that, I mean, a CPR in progress call, I mean, you get out there 9, 10, 12, 15 minutes after the fact, we're really not going to have a good outcome with that. So it really handicaps us with the ability to be able to make a difference, which is what we're here for, is to at least give folks a chance to make a difference.
So with this resolution for the memorandum of understanding, that would, for the schools, if we approve to send this on to BOMA with a recommendation, if we have that, that would mean that you would be toned out right off the bat.
If that's the way we would want that drawn up, yes, 100%.
So
one thing I would like to point out, in case there's any questions at a later point, about halfway down the paper, you'll see the 5001 series, and those are fire prevention inspections. Okay, so we have a fire prevention bureau, right? And so they do code enforcement inspections, yada, yada, yada. We are bound by state law to go with the state fire marshal's office to those schools to make sure they're following the codes and the policies. So those are, I guess, 15 calls have been over the last 5 years where we visited those schools on an annual basis with the state fire marshal's
So
office.
that will continue, that portion.
100%.
Yeah, as well it should.
100%.
on the memorandum of understanding, does anyone else have any questions, concerns? I will say that we got an email from MTASK. For those of you that don't know what MTASK is, it's the Municipal Technical Advisory Service. They are the organization that helps all of the cities with government questions and all kinds of stuff. They are the ones that have templates for the mutual aid agreement. And I will just read one sentence that was sent in the letter for them. MTASK highly recommends that the city follow directions outlined in the state statutes if the desire is to have mutual aid agreements for service outside the corporate limits of the city involving service to non-city residents and entities. So they are telling us that we need to do this as well, and that is who we use to advise us. So do we have a motion on this resolution? I would like
I
to,
will send it with a positive recommendation to BOMA
I will
tonight.
second
Chairman
that.
Goodwood, can I mention something?
Sure.
I have it on my proposed agenda for tonight, even though that violates the 2-week rule. I feel like this is something that is obviously timely, and so hope that y'all would also consider to endorse the fact that we will when we set the
Absolutely.
agenda.
Absolutely.
We will
It's
add that
urgent.
to this.
It's urgent.
Under discussion, may I say something?
Please.
Ask a question. And I sent a couple of questions to Jesse, so Chief Bush or Jesse, just for the record, I think it's important that we put this in the record. So when was the need for an interlocal agreement first communicated with the affected volunteer fire departments?
Enter around October 23rd.
23rd, okay. When was the first face-to-face meeting with the volunteer, including Shackle Island Fire Department?
November the 7th, we had a meeting here at City Hall with myself, the mayor, Mr. Eckenroth, the chief of Shackle Island, and the chief of number 1, along with one of his assistants and my assistant chief as well.
At that meeting, did we share with them our recommended agreement?
Yes, sir. It had been shared with them actually before that. We let them review it prior to the meeting so they would be prepared for questions.
So when was that? Do you know when that date was, when we first shared?
I'd have to go back and look at that. I can,
End of October.
End of October, thank you. And after the meetings, have we made any concessions in the initial agreements based upon objections from Shackle Island Volunteer Fire Department?
yes, sir. If you remember correctly, we had some conversation and I felt like number 9 on the original one would be a rub because it said we would show up and take over. In their world or anybody's world, right, for an outside agency to come into something 10, 12 minutes into it and us take over, that's really not how it typically works. So we requested that we remove that we would automatically take incident command and said that we would attach ourselves to their command structure and making decisions tactically, operationally, or anything else on that fireground.
Excellent. So we met with them in October the 23rd. We shared with them the end of October the agreement. They had some objections. We made concessions. We resubmitted it to them and they still rejected it. Is that correct?
As far as I know, to this date, we don't have anything signed by Shackle Island.
That's all. Thank you.
Okay.
They did send us a counter offer.
Yeah.
And there's no resolution. Nobody is sponsoring that counter offer at this time, this resolution, so it's not up for discussion.
I did think it was my responsibility to let y'all know that they did send us a counter offer. We had initially asked them to suggest changes to our offer. They didn't make any more suggestions after the November 7th meeting. Instead, they sent us the agreement they signed with Goodlettsville. And you've got a discussion item coming up here. I did not draw it up as a resolution, but I thought that I had a responsibility to bring it to the Public Safety Committee.
We will talk about that when we get done. Okay. You made a motion to move this on to FOMA. I'll second that motion.
And for tonight.
And to put it on for tonight. I'll second. Motion passes. Okay. Next is the Shackle Island Volunteer Fire Agreement. We've had some discussion. Does anybody want to add to that discussion?
We offered an agreement that was suitable to us. They did not accept our offer, and in my opinion, we're done. It's over.
Do you want to add anything to that, or?
I don't, but I think you're following what the will of the board was, and I have to follow the will of the board.
And we made a good faith effort to get an agreement signed with MTESC, our attorney, everybody writing it. Okay, anyone else have any discussion on that? Okay, next is Chief Jones with the civilian government body and local community notification regarding participation in the Defense Logistics and Reutilization Program.
So we did this last year, and basically what this is, the federal government initially proposed 1 year only to notify the public and the governing body for the jurisdiction that any agency that participated in the Defense Reutilization Program, that we have to notify, again, the public and the governing body of any class of material that we might request from them under the program. And so based on our prior participation in the program and my experience, there's times that things come up that, and it can just depend on how they classify it. I mean, as far as something we consider computers, they may call it computers, they may call it business machines. So if you ask for just that classification and something else comes up that the agency wants to request, and we didn't put that in our original notification, we can't request it from the government. So in compliance with the presidential directive, we're just notifying the public and the governing body that we may request something from any and all classes of government equipment through this program that we're participants in. So we're fulfilling our obligation to notify the board. And we did this last year also. Initially, it was just for 1 year. For whatever reason, now they said we're going to do it every year. So that's it.
Sounds good. Thank you for notifying us.
Thank you.
And, Mr. Eckenroth, would you like to give a tornado update?
Sure. We have been extremely busy with the tornadoes, or with the tornado, with our efforts and our response to that. I think the main thing for the city right now that everyone feels is NES's response, which has been tremendous. They will be here tonight to speak on the matter, and they will have some customer service reps who will actually be stationed in this conference room tomorrow to be here for residents if they have any concerns. As of now, there's about close to 1,400 without power, or there was at least this afternoon. They expect to have about 1,000 of those with power this evening. So tomorrow there should be about 400 who don't have power, and they expect to get the majority, if not all, of those up tomorrow. But we should have we're gonna have two of their vice presidents speak to Boma tonight about that.
Do you know where the 400 will be? Like what neighborhood will possibly not have power until
Can
tomorrow?
we pull up a website? You want to do that?
Yeah, sure.
Maybe I can get you-
So and anyone who's watching too, if you go to the city's website, which we're going to right now, you can click on this tornado damage, and our public information officer, Casey Lamar, has put this together. It's pretty awesome. You keep scrolling down and you can get to the links. If you keep scrolling down. Right, oh, you passed it. Okay, right there, the top one right there. This is a link to NES. This has their maps that they put out, and if you zoom in,
I've gone in many times.
the maps will do two things. Jamie's going to drive it here. If you click on some of these areas, it gives a polygon. The polygons aren't exact, but they're pretty close. And it will show the area that is affected as well as the number of customers who are affected in those areas. They're continuing to work on these lines. So some of this is somewhat dynamic as it changes a little bit.
Mhm.
Those three areas that Mayor Clary just pulled up are the most affected. So that says it's about, the one above is about 150 customers. The red ones are the biggest.
Yes.
I think you have a couple hundred over here. You have about 500 customers there and 670 customers there. So there, last report I got, there was 118 broken poles that they were replacing, a lot of them along Main Street, which they were drilling through the night to set the new poles today. They continue to work on that. They've gotten the majority of the residents in Hendersonville back online, and will continue to make Hendersonville a priority for the city.
Great.
And you don't know which of those geographic areas is more likely to be repaired tonight?
They will probably, they might have, the NES folks might have a better idea of which areas they're going to prioritize. They were trying to prioritize where they got the most value, so where the most affected homeowners were at, trying to go to those areas first.
That's what we just.
And I've heard a lot of great compliments on our fire and police that they handled it really well. So
Absolutely. I think, fire has done a tremendous amount of assessments. So the initial, event went off. We ended up getting a command center together. Chief Bush got all his guys to go out and start running assessments of the buildings. PD had to man, over 20, I think about 25 intersections that were dark. So it was a tremendous coordinated effort between fire and PD. There were multiple agencies who were involved. We'll go through a more detailed list of who those agencies were this evening. We got, I think, all but one intersection back up with power. The only intersection that is still down with power, I believe, is Main and Bluegrass. There was damage to a lot of our traffic signals. So we called in a contractor, Stanzel. They've been out and they repaired 95% of the damage. So most of our traffic signals are good to go. We don't have power yet to one signal. So as far as a roadway and the public traveling paths, we are making significant progress and almost completely open back up.
I think NES has done a wonderful job in addition to our police and fire. And I happened to be in Walmart when this happened, and my drive home, I thought, we're gonna have power again sometime between 2 weeks and never. It was the whole city that didn't have power. And it is amazing to me that we have power as soon as we do. And I also just want to take the opportunity to say how grateful I am that Gallatin, Lebanon, and Tennessee Highway Patrol have been in to help us. And that Lebanon is helping us with Public Works, with brush removal. Is that accurate? Am I leaving somebody off?
There's multiple agencies helping us with brush, so I'll give you those right now.
You just read all the people who helped us so that the community knows that we appreciate it so much.
There's the city of Portland, White House, Lebanon, Mount Juliet, Goodlettsville, Smyrna, Murfreesboro, Highway Patrol. Franklin was up here, right? Run
Lebanon.
of fire.
Murfreesboro.
So
You mentioned THP.
yeah, Tennessee Highway Patrol, TDOT. So Webb, if you're listening, shout out to Webb. He did awesome from TDOT. NES, I mean, their VPs have been in contact with us throughout this. That's been incredible. Governor Lee was in town. Chamber of Commerce and United Way are helping too organize.
We've also heard from Xfinity has kept in touch with us during this. I mean, it's been amazing to me. And I sincerely did not intend to make this political, but this is how mutual aid is supposed to work. And this time we're the recipients, and that will be reciprocated when it's needed. We have been to Lebanon when they had a terrible tornado. I know we've been to Gatlinburg or that area when they had terrible wildfires, and other times that other areas have needed help, we step up. And it hurts to be the recipients of that, but I'm so thankful.
Yeah, and the county has lent us some light towers, and EMA has helped out too. TEMA's here, so I mean, everyone's just done a really phenomenal job. It is very encouraging to see everyone help.
We'll have a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I will second it. All in favor? We are adjourned.